The following content has been provided by RWTH Aachen University.
Next thing we're going to see, Sun Starfire. The videos continue. This was done in the time 92, 94, and this is a video prototype. So it's a vision video of a future communication and computation system. It was done by Bruce Tognazini, or short TOG, who was back at that time the human factors engineering group lead at Sunsoft, which was part of Sun Microsystems. Before that, he had actually been one of the key developers of the graphical user interface of the Mac. And there's a book called Talk on Interface, which collects questions that Apple developers had been posing concerning user interface design, and that he had been answering in columns over the years and was collected in a book. So he moved to Sun and said, he wanted to really envision what computation would look like not quite so far out. So in this case, done in 92, 94, the story and itself, actually we learn in the story, takes place on November 16th, 2004, which was a lot of fun. When I was showing this many years ago, we could actually show it on the day that it was supposed to take place and notice that reality is a little different. And then, again, write down what's realistic now and which parts aren't.
Sun Microsystems, the power of the future.
Okay. So that was clearly a more realistic view, I guess, right, of the future. What kind of things struck you in that video? What kind of stuck out? What did you notice? Yeah.
Well, I've noticed some stuff, but the last one that I found out was the wireless internet connection. Because I don't think that all the stuff that she found about the car exhibition in the 99 was uploaded into her computer, but she just Googled the phrase, and found out all the references in the articles that was talking about this car exhibition. And she did it just like from her laptop, and there were no wireless connection to it. No wired connection to it.
Okay, so it was probably assuming some kind of connection into the internet. That was clearly an online search that she was doing. Yeah. Okay, yeah, it's a good observation. That seemed like an unconnected laptop, so obviously Wi-Fi was or something like that was being assumed. Yeah. Yes.
What struck out for me right in the beginning was that there are personal computer stations at each airport. So that you can access your personal data in another way that you could do now. Of course, you can log in your internet things, your accounts, and have the information everywhere. Yeah. But that was another thing, I think.
Yeah, that's right. So there's the vision. There is sort of, if you wanted to, for example, this was obviously the guy from he was checking in from the UK, and he wanted to video conference with the lady in her office, and so he went to this booth to do that. Right, it's almost like a phone booth plus, right? So you could access his data and also do the video conferencing call. Today would say we don't enter a particular room for that. We just do that on our iPad wherever we are, right? So that's an interesting sort of move or different development from what they were expecting. Other things? Yeah.
Yes, the screen was able to scan also.
Yeah, the screen was scanning, right? It was scanning the newspaper article by just rubbing on it. It also scanned in her sandwich. Which brings me to another interesting point. Did you notice something about that video that was different from, for example, also the Knowledge Navigator? Or maybe not entirely different, but there was a stronger stress on something going on, happening every now and then than in the other videos we've seen. Yeah?
Constantly about what was happening?
Notifications about what was going on. Yeah, there was a lot of that when the system was reporting back on what it was doing. But what I'm referring to was mistakes and errors and like just little mess ups in the interaction were happening a lot when you think about it. There was the scanning of the sandwich, which wasn't helpful. Yes?
The voice command, there was a point where there was sentence the voice command not understand.
Yeah, she was practicing her speech that she was going to give later on her presentation, and the system said like voice command not recognized. That's right. Yeah. So that was. Think about what these guys are doing. They're doing a video prototype, so they can fake it all, right? They can make it work perfectly, but they don't. They actually write in the script. At this point, I want the system to show that it's failing in a small way. That is a very conscious decision that you probably wouldn't have come up with. If you made a video prototype naively, you would just have made it as good as possible, right? Just to do the things that you want to show. But focusing on the errors and the ways, the small things that can go wrong and how the system then recovers or deals with it is actually a very interesting design decision in the video prototype. Yes?
For example, the scanned sandwich, you can just swipe and it was gone. So
yeah,
that shows how easy you can recover from it.
She got rid of it, exactly. So these people who were doing this design team knew that mistakes happen, and they focused not on hiding them or making them not even happen, but they focused on how would the system react if that mistake happened. Yes?
Yeah, and also about the scanning function, I didn't get it completely because when she wanted to scan a newspaper, she didn't just put it on the display. She also wrapped it to show to the computer that she wanted to scan exactly this part, like force and touch this. But when she put sandwich, she didn't do this.
She didn't rub the sandwich.
She just put it and put it back and here's there.
Yeah, maybe minor inconsistency, maybe the weight of the sandwich is enough to make it. We could come up with stories here. This was all the video prototype anyway, so it's.
Because, firstly, I mentioned that display recognizes maybe just two positions of touching, like not forced and forced. So if you force something on the screen, and if you push something.
Okay.
And if not, it will be.
Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, okay, that's a possibility. Yeah. Yes.
Also, after scanning, there was an image optimization afterwards.
Right, it was turning it around, and then it was going like and sort of whatever OCR or whatever was going on. In general, something very noticeable about this one is there were a lot of very physical metaphors being played out in like long animations, right? The little film roll that, what's a film roll, right? But they were still using the film roll as a metaphor to gather these images that were getting out of this old TV ad, and then they poured it literally over that little mannequin. So a lot of animations that would probably drive you nuts if you had to look at them every day in that, But they were in the video. Why do you think they were in there? Yeah?
Make it more understandable what the system is doing, because the people then didn't know the stuff we know.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. If you were watching the video, if you didn't have these, really, flowery animations, lots of stuff going on, you weren't able to. You wouldn't have been able to follow quite what was going on. It would seem more like, how would the system do that, or why? What just happened? What did the system just do? So by pouring it over, it gives you the time as a viewer to think about. Oh, this was taking the image data, the text data, and putting it on the 3D mannequin. Okay, I get it. Right? Yes?
They also had a really broad ecosystem of devices. She had her desktop, she had her tablet, and she could send all the things to the presentation screen. So there's they were all connected.
That's right. There's even that little laptop that she flips open in the meeting. So there's all kinds of different devices. The camera that is like the camera control thing that shows her the viewpoint of the camera, that actually physically moves the camera around at that remote location in San Francisco. Yeah.
I think it's not something with usability or something, but it got more personal. The first one was like really office-based and just remembering the dates and the telephone calls, but the system said bless you, and it was she was watching her colleague or something, and so it got more into her personal life than the first one.
Yes. So, well, the first one also got into personal lives with, like, reminding him about his mother's birthday or his father's birthday and so on. And here the system wasn't actually suggesting that the bless you actually came from her husband. He was just, trying to play on a sci-fi meme of, sorry, you can't do that, Dave. So that was actually her husband speaking. But you're right with the flowers. That was actually, again, it wasn't quite just a positive thing, right? She could see video conference into other people's offices, and this other person wasn't aware that she was being watched. And so when she got those flowers, then this guy comes in and proposes to her. She probably didn't want that to be seen on the company's internet, whatever, video feed, right? So that's a question of Big Brother, right? This is a question of being watched and what that means for privacy and security. And we could see that she was able to then close, I don't know, the door or maybe the camera lens, and then it said in a meeting. So again, it was actually bringing up issues about that technology along with presenting the technology itself.
Yeah, another big thing is that in this case, I personally would more speak of an AI because the PC reminds her of taking her medicine, and it didn't seem so that she programmed him.
Okay, again, that was her husband. This is one thing that you easily mistake the first time when this voice comes in and you realize that it's actually her husband talking to her over a video feed before she'd realized that he's connected. Because she says, oh, cut it out, and that's her talking to her husband. Because he then says when they do the video link, I'm sorry, honey, our daughter put me up to doing this. And then he references what is it, 2001? Or which one is it? Dave, the computer, HAL, that's 2001, right? Okay, so sci-fi stuff. Yes?
And there also was a kind of Photoshop when they managed to download a map, and the computer saved a kind of 3D model of this man, and then put it behind the car.
Yeah.
And they moved him, and the clothes also moved.
Yeah. So there was actually a lot of interesting sort of interaction going on with this 3D model and the person and the car. That was making a lot of assumptions, right? So a couple different views from the video of the person would give you a 3D model of his clothes and his texture, and which would then render onto that artificial figurine, and then you could move that around and even like drag his hand out and it would know what to do, although that movement maybe wasn't even in the original video. So there was a lot of assumptions there about 3D editing. Yes?
There was some pingless movement recognizing, because when she walks with the tablet through the room, the camera moved exactly like she was moving the tablet. This is something which is even now very crazy. I don't know how you want to do this.
Right. So how does the system or some kind of sensor know how this tablet is being moved around in 3D in order to translate those movements over to the camera at the remote location?
Immediately, it's far away, and it's just immediately.
Yeah. There's even the whole kind of speed of light issue that comes into play there at some point, right? You go half across the country and move something around, you start getting delays. So those were a couple things that were interesting. Now, something curious happened with the video. They didn't just produce the video and put it out. They also published a paper on how they made that video. And they published a paper on what they learned about video prototyping, complete with some recommendations on how to video prototype. That will be one of the reading assignments for you guys to find out more about that process. But I want to highlight some of the points that they bring up in their video prototyping guidelines. The first thing is, Tognazini says that they actually had to continually question themselves whether what the assumptions they were making were still reasonable within a 10-year time frame. So they were really trying to not go out like the knowledge navigator, like, oh yeah, will understand me, but actually say all the technologies that they were showing, that's what it says in the video, are supposed to be available in research labs today, so in 94 or 92. They iterated over the video prototype like over any other prototype. We'll talk more about iterating over prototypes later in this class. They included things that go wrong in the story. We already mentioned that. They tried to really avoid impossible hardware designs, so not, the foldable display without a seam. That was something that they didn't want to do. And Tog also pointed out that it's really important to design your interface first, really like you were designing a real system, decide on how it works, and then make the video. Because if you make things up as you go, it's very easy to contradict yourself. Like with the scanning, where we're always seeing some kind of, it's weird that one time she has to rub to scan, the other time it scans the sandwich without anything. So those are things to be aware of. And then they decided also to film the scenes based on the budget they had. For example, you will see that there's of course mouse control. That's easy. Voice control is also easy to fake, right? Because the system doesn't actually need to recognize what she's saying. You just need to show the right response in the video. And you will notice actually when she does these interactions on the screen, on this big screen, a lot of times you will see her face. And it's really easy to film somebody go like this, right? You don't need any technology for that. And then you kind of, in the next setting, you show just the screen without her hands, where showing the result of her actions. So it would have been much more effort to create those scenes where she actually moves her finger and something tracks on the screen in real time. That's actually much harder to do. So I mentioned the reading assignment. This is the Starfire video prototype project, appeared in Chi 94, documenting the video prototyping guidelines. And if you want to find more about this, Tog DIS1 wrote a second book after the Tog on Interface book, Tog on Software Design, which was actually originally called Starfire. So he talks more about this prototype there in his book. And so finally, to give you an idea of how these things have moved ahead, one thing that I found interesting you guys didn't mention was that there was a curved surface display, right? This was actually a display that was warped this way and this way. So today you can buy, flat screen TVs that aren't actually flat anymore, but they're still only warped in one direction. This was a surface that was warped in two directions. And that actually kind of triggered us a few years ago to say, well, Starfire was imagined in 92. Now it's, 2012 or something. We can actually build this thing. So we went ahead and built what we call the bent desk, which you'll find upstairs in our lab. And that is actually a curved surface display, seriously curved, right, like this. And it was very interesting to work with this display in our research because we started learning how people would interact with a curved surface. Some things aren't quite obvious when you work with a curved surface. For example, when I try to flick something up from here to up there, how do I judge which direction I need to flick? Because this is not a flat surface. And we learned some interesting mistakes people make when they work with these non-planar surfaces in interactions. So that's one of the research directions we continue to explore, interaction with non-planar surfaces. And we actually invited Bruce Tognazini, the guy from the author of the original Starfire prototype and the guy who developed much of the Mac user interface graphics and design metaphors. We invited him over a couple of years ago, and he came over and saw the bent desk, and he was crawling around inside our construction. Was like, wow, this is awesome. You guys actually built this thing. And he gave a very interesting talk on Starfire and the future of user interfaces.
This content was provided by RWTH Aachen University.